Welcome to a special episode of Carissa Explains It All. A friend and I were talking about a certain topic yesterday, and it's just really stuck in my head, and I feel like I need to get it out in a really real way. So some of this is stuff I've written down that I'm going to be kind of reading, and some of it I'm just going to freeform it. This is not something that I really do, making videos, so I'm sorry if it seems a bit chaotic, but I feel like it's important stuff to say, so I'm just going to say it. Abusers, particularly narcissistic abusers, will intentionally trigger you. If you're a person who deals with post-traumatic stress or complex post-traumatic stress, and most of us who find ourselves with abusers do, you will find yourself having extreme response to these triggers. It will put you into a particular emotional state, which is not rooted in your true identity. It's rooted in surviving the attack or perceived attack. It's not actually perceived, it is really happening, but the level of genuine physical threat might not be as high as our brains tell us. But the point is, your brain is desperate to survive that attack. So that's where that emotional response is coming from. It doesn't say anything about who you actually are as a person. I just need to say that. For you and for me. So in order to survive that attack, you may become aggressive in response. You may even become abusive in response. That happens. And then later down the road, you're in some form of conflict with this abuser. And then they bring up how damaging and abusive you were as a means of eliciting guilt and empathy from you, which is to increase their control over you. Here's the point of what I'm trying to say. The abuser weaponized you. When you're in a triggered state, having an emotional flashback, and unaware of what's actually happening, you aren't, in a very real sense, in control of yourself. The abuser picked you up like a knife and cut themselves. Self-harm. So rather than thinking of it as you abused them and feeling horrible about yourself and super apologetic and empathetic to this abuser, recognize what's actually happening. They picked up a knife, a weapon, you, and engaged in cutting. Self-harm. Self-abuse. I'm not saying damage wasn't done. You know, you get cut, you might need stitches. But that damage was, in a very real way, self-inflicted. You're no more to blame than a knife laying on the counter in that moment. I'm not saying that you don't have a responsibility to heal whatever is going on inside of you that caused you to have that response to them. That's absolutely your responsibility once you have a level of awareness of what's going on. But if you are in an abusive relationship, you well know a lot of times you're walking around in a fog, in a cloud, And especially in those moments when you are intentionally triggered, you don't know what's happening. You don't, you just react. There's no premeditation there on your part. You are like an animal backed into a corner. Even if we want to let go of this knife comparison, which is fair if you don't want to be considered an inanimate object. But if we even think of it in terms of an animal, a dog who is repeatedly abused, harmed, and then all of a sudden one day bites this person who has been beating them. If we were looking at that situation, we saw all that abuse, would we blame the dog for biting, for attacking the person who abused them? No. And when you're having a post-traumatic response, you are like an animal backed into a corner. And I'm saying this from experience. I am a very gentle person by nature. I'm a pretty calm person by nature. And I have had physical responses to being triggered and abused. I have physically gone after my abuser because I was flashing back to a time when I was a child and I was in very real danger. And I panicked. And I remember flying across the room in response to that trigger. And he had physically attacked me, so there is that. But flying across the room and punching him in the face. And it was like I was watching myself do it, but I had no control over my body. So this is what I'm trying to say. In those moments, and the level of extreme is going to be different for everyone. You're not necessarily going to be to that level of extreme, but that's how far it could go depending on your original trauma or traumas. You're not in control. They don't want you to be in control. They're in control. You're the knife, they're picking you up and cutting themselves. Or you're like, like you're a programmed, I'm not thinking of the right word, assassin droid, you're a programmed droid. I'm like picturing stuff from Star Wars, but I'm not putting the correct name to it. You're programmed, you're running on a program. They programmed you to attack them for a purpose. So take that guilt out of it. Take that power away from them. Like don't allow them to wield that guilt any longer. And elicit that empathetic response from you, which they don't deserve at all right now. Not from you. Not from you. It's not appropriate. So take that out of it and recognize what happened. And with that awareness, then you can make the changes that you need to, or start to identify. You can identify that is what's happening, that you are having an emotional flashback, an extreme response, and then work on healing what's causing that. And then they no longer wield any power in that way against you. Then you have your own power. Then you're in control and you're telling yourself what to do. And you're no longer an inanimate object. You're no longer a knife sitting on the counter that they pick up and use to cut themselves. So that was just the thing that felt really important to say. And I don't know that this is anything highly original, but it's just something that popped into my head, and I didn't happen to see a video specifically saying anything like this. But I will say that I have watched a lot of really helpful videos on YouTube on abuse about narcissism and CPTSD, which if you are in an abusive relationship, you will experience. The degree will vary, kind of depending on what you've been through in the past. But, so I just wanted to put that out there, in case it's not something somebody had heard of or thought of before. Some YouTubers who have been extremely helpful for me are Empoweress, Stacy Hoch. She is awesome. She's been kind of like my gateway to enlightenment to a degree. Her book is also awesome. Look her up. And also Richard Grannon. I feel like he's doing some really innovative stuff, innovative work with CPTSD especially. And if you check him out, he has a free course on stopping emotional flashbacks, which I think is just an amazing place to start if you're dealing with this, or if you've dealt with it in the past and you don't want to go there again. So it's honestly, I think it's beneficial for everyone. I think everyone living in this world probably experiences emotional flashbacks to one degree or another. So I would just check it out and work on your brain. But they've been super helpful for me. There's a lot of others too that I can't think of all the names, but yeah. So check them out and educate as best as you can so that you aren't an inanimate object. You aren't a weaponized person. You are you. You are owning yourself. You are in control of your actions. And remind yourself of that as often as you can. All right. Thank you for listening to my ramblings and bearing with me for this rather scattered video in a not so perfect setting at a really late hour at night in horrible lighting. Thank you.